Maybe you should get a job and stop being a burden.
A burden? Then you won't mind supporting yourself.
What does that mean?
You have 30 days.
My 32-year-old son called me a burden while sitting at my dining table, eating food I had bought in a house I owned free and clear. I gave him and his wife 30 days to leave. But 10 days later, I discovered they were not just planning to stay. They were quietly making plans for my house, my money, and the rest of my life. What they did not know was that I had already started making plans of my own. Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Delaney. I am 59 years old, a widow, and I live outside Charlotte, North Carolina. For most of my life, I believed being a good mother meant keeping the peace, even when that peace cost me my comfort, my money, and sometimes my dignity. That belief ended on a Sunday evening in June. My son Spencer and his wife Jocelyn had been living with me for 8 months. They originally asked to stay for 3 months while they saved for a down payment on a house. Spencer was my only child. His father Thomas had died 4 years earlier, and I suppose grief made me hold on to my son too tightly. When Spencer asked for help, I did not hesitate. I opened my home, cleared the larger guest room, made space in the garage for his restored 1968 Mustang, and told them they could stay without paying rent. I thought I was giving them a temporary advantage. I did not realize I was teaching them that my generosity had no limit. Before I tell you what happened at that dinner table, I would love to know where you are listening from. What city, state, or country has my story reached? Please tell me in the comments below, because it still amazes me that one woman's story can travel farther than she ever could. At first, living together seemed manageable. Then small expectations became daily demands. I cooked most meals because Jocelyn said she came home too tired. I did their laundry because they left it in the hallway until someone dealt with it. I paid for the internet, streaming services, groceries, utilities, and Spencer's car insurance because he said every dollar needed to go toward their future home. The trouble was their savings never seemed to grow. Packages arrived almost every day. Jocelyn bought designer shoes, skincare products, and expensive bottles of wine. Spencer ordered rare Mustang parts and spent hundreds of dollars on weekend outings. When I gently asked how the house fund was going, Spencer would say, "We're getting there, Mom. Stop worrying." So I stopped asking. On that Sunday, I had spent nearly 3 hours preparing pot roast, vegetables and fresh bread. Jocelyn took one bite, put down her fork and said, "The meat is dry again." I was tired and something in her tone bothered me. Still, I answered calmly, "Maybe you can cook tomorrow night. I would enjoy a break." Spencer's fork hit his plate. "Maybe you should get a job and stop being a burden," he said. The room went silent. Jocelyn lifted her wine glass, but not before I saw the small smile at the corner of her mouth. I looked at my son and waited for him to correct himself. He did not. Instead, he leaned back and continued, "You sit around this house all day while everyone else works. The least you can do is make a decent dinner without complaining." For a few seconds, I could not speak. Then I laughed. It was not a nervous laugh. It came from the deepest part of me, the place where months of disappointment had finally become clarity. Spencer frowned. "What's so funny?" I placed my napkin beside my plate. "You are," I said. "You are calling me a burden while living in my house, using my internet, eating my groceries, storing your car in my garage, and allowing me to pay your insurance." His face turned red. "That's not what I meant." "It is exactly what you meant." Jocelyn crossed her arms. "This is becoming dramatic." I looked at both of them and felt a strange calm settle over me. You have 30 days to move out. Spencer blinked. Excuse me? Find an apartment, rent a house, or stay with friends. You are both employed adults. Where you go is no longer my responsibility. Jocelyn's glass touched the table with a sharp click. You can't throw us onto the street over one comment. This is not about one comment. It is about 8 months of disrespect. I stood and carried my plate toward the kitchen. Then I turned back. Starting tomorrow, I will no longer cook for you, clean for you, wash your clothes, buy your groceries, or pay Spencer's personal expenses. I will give you written notice in the morning so there is no confusion. Spencer stared at me as if he were waiting for the mother he knew to return. The mother who softened every consequence and apologized whenever he became angry. Stop acting crazy, Mom, he said. I looked him directly in the eyes. The crazy part was allowing this to continue for 8 months. Then I walked into the kitchen and closed the door behind me. I did not sleep much that night. Part of me wanted to knock on their door, take back the deadline, and blame everything on emotion. But every time guilt rose inside me, I remembered Jocelyn's smile and Spencer's words. At 6 the next morning, I called an attorney named Elaine Porter. She had handled Thomas's estate after his death and had always been practical with me. I explained the living arrangement and asked what I should do. Elaine did not encourage drama. She told me not to change the locks, remove their belongings, or shut off essential services while they still occupied the house. She said that because they had been there for months, I needed to treat the situation formally, even though they had never paid rent. By 10 o'clock, Elaine had prepared a written notice ending their permission to occupy my home. She also recommended a voluntary move-out agreement. If they signed it and returned the keys by the deadline, I would give them a modest amount for moving expenses. If they refused, she would begin the legal process immediately. That advice mattered. I wanted my home back, but I wanted it back lawfully. I was done cleaning up Spencer's mistakes. I had no intention of creating one of my own. When Spencer came downstairs, he found the notice in a large envelope on the kitchen counter. You called a lawyer? He asked. Yes. Your own son needs legal notice now. My own son told me I was a burden in my own home. Clear boundaries seem necessary. He glanced through the pages without reading them carefully. Jocelyn appeared behind him and asked where breakfast was. The kitchen is right there, I said. Her expression told me she thought I was joking. I carried 1 cup of coffee to my garden and sat beside my roses. A few minutes later, Spencer came outside holding his phone. The Wi-Fi password isn't working. I had changed the password on the private network connected to my office and security system. Elaine had advised me to leave the household guest network active until they moved, so I handed him the new guest password. This network does not connect to my office printer, files, or devices, I said. You will have internet, but you will not have access to my private network. He stared at me. You don't trust me? I clipped a dead rose from its stem. Trust is earned, Spencer. At the moment, you are overdrawn. By the 3rd day, they understood that the free hotel had closed. Jocelyn left silk blouses and expensive dresses in the hallway basket. I placed the entire basket outside their bedroom. Spencer asked when I planned to buy groceries. I told him I already had. Then I showed him the 2 empty shelves in the refrigerator and 1 cabinet I had cleared for them. Those are yours, I said. Everything else is mine. That afternoon, I hired a locksmith to install a lock on my pantry and another on my office door. My pantry contained specialty coffee, good wine, imported oil, and food I had collected over years of cooking. Jocelyn had treated it like a free boutique. Once she took a $90 bottle of wine to a friend's dinner and claimed she had bought it herself. That evening, she pulled on the pantry door and discovered it was locked. "We need food," she said. "Then you need a grocery store. What about the truffle oil? I was going to make pasta. You can buy your own." She looked genuinely offended. Family should share. Family should also contribute, ask permission, and show respect. Spencer came into the kitchen and accused me of being petty. "Maybe I am," I replied. "But notice what makes you angry. Neither of you is upset that our relationship is damaged. You are upset because the services I provided have stopped." They had no answer for that. On Saturday morning, I found a yellow note stuck to my refrigerator. "Friends coming at 11. Please stay out of the living room." I read it twice. My name was not on it. There was no request, only an instruction telling me to disappear inside my own home. I walked upstairs and knocked on their door. Jocelyn opened it with a sleep mask pushed onto her forehead. "Your gathering is cancelled," I said. "What? You did not ask to use my home. You informed me that I was not allowed in my living room. That is not happening." As she called Spencer, who came into the hall already irritated. "Mum, it's just a few friends." "Then meet them somewhere else." "You're embarrassing us." "No, I am refusing to be embarrassed in my own house." Jocelyn's voice became cold. "When this house belongs to us, things are going to be very different." The words came out quickly, almost carelessly. Spencer turned toward her with a look that told me she had said something she was not supposed to say. I felt a chill move through me. "What did you just say?" I asked. She folded her arms. "I said, when we have our own house, things will be different." That was not what she had said, and all three of us knew it. I did not argue. I simply watched them walk back into the bedroom and close the door. For the first time, I wondered whether their refusal to move was about more than comfort. Maybe they believed my house would eventually become theirs. Maybe they had been discussing my future without including me in the conversation. That question stayed with me all weekend. On Monday, I reclaimed my garage. Spencer's Mustang occupied one side, but its tools and parts had spread across both parking spaces. My sedan had been sitting in the driveway through heat, rain, and pollen for months. I called Spencer and told him he had 8 hours to move the car and clear one full parking space. He refused, so I rented a secure storage bay for 1 month in his name, paid the first month's fee, and hired a licensed towing company to move the Mustang there. I placed his boxed tools inside the unit and handed him the key when he returned from work. His face went dark when he saw my Sen parked in my own garage. "Where is my car?" he demanded. I gave him the address and key. "You moved my Mustang professionally and safely. The first month is paid. After that, the cost is yours." "Put it back." "No." He stepped closer, waiting for me to retreat. I did not. "You keep saying no like that makes you powerful," he said. "No, Spencer, it makes me clear." He went inside without another word. The next afternoon, I received an alert from the camera outside my office. The new lock had not been installed yet because the locksmith was waiting for a part. On my phone, I watched Spencer enter the room while I was in the garden. He went directly to my filing cabinet. I did not rush inside. I began recording the camera feed and called Elaine. By the time I reached the office, Spencer was holding one of my investment statements. His face had lost all its colour. $5 million, he whispered. I took the statement from his hand. You entered my private office and searched my files. You have $5 million. That is not an answer. He looked from the document to me. Shock quickly became anger. You've been hiding this while making us buy our own groceries. I almost could not believe what I was hearing. Most of that money came from your father's life insurance, investments, and the sale of his company shares. He left it to me so I would be secure. He was my father, and I was his wife. He would have wanted me to have some of it. I paid for your education. We gave you a reliable car. We helped with your wedding. I covered your emergency debts twice. Your father loved you, but he did not leave you control of my future. Spencer stared at me with a resentment I had never seen before. You have more money than you'll ever need. That still does not make it yours. I told him to leave the office. He did, but he paused at the doorway. If Dad could see what you're doing, he would be ashamed. That sentence hurt more than the insult at dinner. Thomas had been my partner for 34 years. Spencer knew exactly where to place the knife. After the door closed, I sat alone and cried for 5 minutes. Then I opened my laptop and started investigating. I checked my email login history, credit reports, bank alerts, and recent security notifications. At first, everything looked normal. Then I found an email in my spam folder from a mortgage company thanking me for my interest in a home equity consultation. I had never contacted that company. My hands became cold. I called the number using the contact information on the company's official website. A loan officer confirmed that someone had submitted an online inquiry using my name, address, approximate property value, and phone number. No loan had been opened, but an appointment had been requested. The email address on the inquiry belonged to Spencer. I asked the officer to cancel everything and note that the inquiry was unauthorized. Then I froze my credit with all 3 major credit bureaus, changed every financial password, and called Elaine again. She came to my house that evening. We reviewed the camera footage, the email, and the notice Spencer had received. Elaine asked whether anything else unusual had happened. I told her what Jocelyn had said. When this house belongs to us. Elaine became very quiet. Do you have an updated power of attorney? She asked. Thomas and I created one years ago. Spencer is the alternate. Tomorrow we replace it. She also suggested updating my will and medical directives. Not as revenge, she said, but as protection. If I became ill, I needed someone who would put my well, being ahead of an inheritance. That night, I heard voices in the kitchen after midnight. I walked halfway down the stairs and stopped where they could not see me. Jocelyn was speaking in an angry whisper. You said she would help with the down payment once she saw how expensive everything was. Spencer answered, I didn't know she had that much. Dad must have left all of it to her. Then ask for the house. She doesn't need 5 bedrooms. She won't agree now. Jocelyn lowered her voice, but I still heard the next sentence. She will eventually. We can let her use the basement apartment. She'll still be close if we need help with kids. They were planning to move me into my own basement. There were no grandchildren. Jocelyn was talking about future children and had already decided that I would provide the house, the money, and the childcare. I went back upstairs without confronting them. My anger was no longer hot. It was precise. The next morning I changed my power of attorney. I named Elaine and my younger sister as joint decision makers if I ever became unable to act for myself. I updated my medical documents, secured my accounts and revised my estate plan. I did not cut Spencer out completely. I still loved my son, but I placed any future inheritance in a protected trust with conditions that prevented anyone from pressuring me during my lifetime. I also directed a significant portion of my estate to a local housing charity for widows and older women facing financial abuse. For the first time since Thomas died, I felt that my future belonged to me. When I returned home, Jocelyn was waiting in the kitchen with an unusually sweet smile. "Monica, can we talk?" I sat across from her, but kept my purse beside me. "Spencer told me about the money," she said. "I think this family has been approaching the situation all wrong." "How should we approach it?" She leaned forward as if she were presenting a brilliant business plan. "You could give us this house as an early inheritance. Spencer and I would take over the taxes and maintenance. We could renovate the basement into a beautiful private suite for you. You would never have to be alone, and the property would stay in the family." I stared at her. "You want me to give you my house and move into the basement?" "Not move into it immediately," she said quickly. "Only when you're ready. It makes financial sense." "For whom?" Her smile faded. I continued. "Did submitting a home equity inquiry in my name also make financial sense?" All the colour left her face. Spencer entered the kitchen behind me. He had clearly been listening. "It was only an inquiry," he said. "I wanted to understand the options. You used my identity and my property information without permission." Nothing happened. Something did happen. "I learned exactly how little you respect my boundaries." I placed a new document on the table. It was the voluntary move out agreement Elaine had prepared. "You now have 10 days," I said. "If you sign this agreement, return every key, and leave the house undamaged, I will pay the moving company directly and cover the security deposit on a reasonable apartment. If you refuse, Elaine will file for possession when the original notice period ends. There will be no cash payment to either of you." Jocelyn stood so quickly that her chair scraped the floor. "You're choosing money over your family." "No, I am choosing safety over entitlement." Spencer looked at the document. "And if we apologise, an apology does not erase an unauthorised financial inquiry." You're really doing this?" "Yes." They argued behind their closed bedroom door for almost an hour. Then Spencer returned alone and signed the agreement. The following week was painfully quiet. Boxes began appearing in the hallway. For the first time in 8 months, they bought their own groceries, washed their own clothes, and made their own plans. Jocelyn complained about every apartment they viewed. One was too small, another was too old, a third had no walk-in closet. Spencer finally chose a clean 1-bedroom apartment across town. It was not luxurious, but it was within their budget. 2 days before the deadline, I received a call from the property manager. Spencer had listed me as a financial guarantor without asking. I closed my eyes and counted to 3. "I am not guaranteeing the lease," I said. "I have agreed only to pay the security deposit directly after they qualify on their own." The manager thanked me and removed my name. That evening, Spencer cornered me near the stairs. "Why did you refuse to co-sign?" "Because I did not agree to co-sign." "The rent is higher without a guarantor. Then choose a less expensive apartment." He rubbed both hands over his face. "You know we can't live the way you expect on what we earn." "You can. You simply cannot live the way you've been living." The truth of that sentence seemed to reach him. He looked around the large hallway, the polished floors, and the home he had mistaken for his future property. "Did Dad really leave everything to you?" he asked quietly. "It did." Was there a letter? I hesitated. There was. Thomas had written personal letters for both of us before his final surgery. I had given Spencer his letter after the funeral. Mine remained locked in my safe. That night, I read it again. Thomas had written that he trusted me to live fully after he was gone. Near the end, one line stood out. Do not let grief convince you that rescuing Spencer from every consequence is the same as loving him. My husband had seen the weakness in me before I saw it myself. On the final morning, a moving truck arrived at 8. I had scheduled and paid the company directly, exactly as the agreement stated. Elaine came as a witness. She was not there to create conflict. She was there to make sure the handover was clear. Spencer carried boxes without speaking. Jocelyn avoided looking at me. By noon, their bedroom was empty. By 2, the Mustang and all remaining tools had been removed from storage and taken to a separate garage they rented near the apartment. At 3:15, Spencer placed 2 house keys and the garage remote on my kitchen island. That's everything, he said. I checked the written inventory. Thank you. Jocelyn stood near the door with her arms folded. I hope this big empty house keeps you company. Her words were meant to hurt me, but they did not. I hope your new apartment teaches you what this house could not. I replied. She walked outside. Spencer remained for a moment. His eyes moved around the kitchen. Are you happy now? He asked. I thought carefully before answering. I am not happy that it came to this, but I am at peace with my decision. He nodded once and followed his wife. I watched them drive away. Then the locksmith changed every exterior code and cylinder. I cancelled their access to the security system, removed their devices from my network, and stood alone in the centre of my quiet kitchen. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I cried. I cried for the little boy who used to bring me dandelions. I cried for Thomas, who should have been standing beside me. I cried because a boundary can be necessary and still break your heart. But beneath the sadness was relief. That evening I made a simple meal, sat at the same table where Spencer had called me a burden, and tasted every bite without criticism. The silence did not feel empty. It felt clean. At 9, my phone rang. Spencer sounded exhausted. Mom, the apartment needs another $800 before they'll release the keys. Can you send it? The old Monica would have transferred the money before he finished the sentence. No, I said, just until payday. You both have jobs. Call the property manager and work out a payment arrangement, or choose another apartment. You have $5 million. And none of it changes the answer. There was a long silence. Fine, he said, and ended the call. I did not chase him. I did not apologize. I made tea and went to bed. The next morning, I began reclaiming my life. I turned their old bedroom into an art studio. I replaced the worn carpet, painted the walls a soft cream, and then placed a large wooden work table beneath the window. I had loved painting when I was young, but marriage, work, motherhood, and grief had pushed it further and further down my list. Now sunlight filled that room every afternoon. I also reclaimed the garden. I planted new roses, herbs, and lavender. I created a sitting area beneath the old maple tree. In the morning, I drank 1 cup of coffee instead of preparing 3 different breakfasts. I travelled with friends. I joined a local painting group. I donated to the housing charity named in my estate plan and began volunteering twice a month. Many of the women I met had spent decades surrendering their financial security to people who called control family responsibility. Their stories reminded me that boundaries are not selfish. Sometimes they are survival. 6 months passed before Spencer came back. One spring afternoon, I saw him standing on my porch through the camera. He looked thinner and older. For a moment, I considered pretending I was not home. Then I opened the door but left the new key safely in my pocket. "Hi, Mom," he said. "Hello, Spencer." He glanced at the lock. "I guess you changed everything." "I did." He nodded. "I understand." That was the first sign that something in him had changed. I invited him to the patio and poured coffee. He looked at the garden and then through the open doors of my studio. "The house looks amazing," he said. "Thank you." For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he set down his cup. "I owe you an apology." I waited. "I treated your home like it already belonged to me. I treated your money like it was waiting for me. And I treated you like your only purpose was to make my life easier." Well, his voice shook. "What I said at dinner was cruel. Going into your office was wrong. Using your information for that loan inquiry was worse. I kept telling myself I was only researching, but I knew I did not have your permission." I nodded slowly. "Yes, you knew?" He looked surprised that I did not rush to comfort him. "Living without your help forced me to see how much you were doing." He continued. "Rent, food, insurance, cleaning, everything. I thought I was independent because I had a job. I wasn't. I was an adult letting my mother carry me." "What about Jocelyn?" I asked. He looked. "We're in counselling. We blamed each other for everything after we moved. And it turns out marriage is very different when there isn't someone else paying the bills and absorbing the stress." I almost smiled, but I let him continue. "I don't expect money," he said. "I don't expect a key. I just wanted to say I am sorry. For the first time since that terrible dinner, I saw my son instead of an entitled stranger. I believe you," I said, "and I love you. But we will rebuild slowly." Tears filled his eyes. "That's fair." We talked for another hour. When he left, I hugged him, but I did not give him money. I welcomed him for coffee, but I did not give him a key. I accepted his apology, but I did not undo the boundary that had finally taught both of us how to live. That night, Spencer sent me one message. "Love you, Mom. Thank you for making me grow up." I replied, "I love you too. Keep taking care of your life." Then I put the phone away. Before I end, let me briefly summarize what happened. I allowed my adult son and his wife to live with me for free, while they supposedly saved for a home. Over 8 months, my kindness became an expectation, and their expectation became entitlement. When Spencer called me a burden, I gave them notice to move. Then I discovered that they had searched my financial records, used my information for a home equity inquiry, and planned to take my house while moving me into the basement. I protected my credit, updated my legal documents, enforced a lawful move out agreement, and finally reclaimed my home. Months later, Spencer returned, not for money, but with a real apology and a willingness to change. The lesson from my story is simple. Love without boundaries can become permission for disrespect. Helping someone is generous, but carrying a capable adult forever prevents that person from growing. Forgiveness does not require us to restore unhealthy access. We can love family, accept an apology, and still protect our home, money, time, and peace. Thank you for watching and listening to my story. If it spoke to you, please like this video and leave a comment. Tell me what you would have done if you were in my position, and please share where you are listening from. After sending that final message to Spencer, I walked into my studio and stood before a blank canvas. Morning light crossed the floor. Outside, my roses were beginning to bloom. For years, I believed that sacrifice was the highest form of motherhood. I now understand that a mother's love is not measured by how much disrespect she can endure. Sometimes love means opening the door when your child needs help. Sometimes it means closing that door long enough for your child to learn how to stand. I did not lose my family when I said no. I stopped losing myself to keep everyone else comfortable. And the day I finally refused to be a burden in my own story was the day my life truly became mine again.